I think what I'd like to do is show a 6-minute video. Shelley Goldsmith was a 19-year-old who went to UVA and died after taking MDMA at Echo Stage in Washington, D.C., which is a really hot nightclub with low ceilings, no chill rooms. DanceSafe released an online survey asking people to talk about their experiences there, and everyone kind of reported back it was really, really hot in the environment inside. And so her parents, who I interviewed for my film, launched a campaign to amend the Rave Act. Who has not heard of the Rave Act? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so the Rave Act was passed in 2003. It's also called the Illicit Drug Anti-Proliferation Act, or RAVE Act was supposed to stand for Reducing America's Vulnerability to the Ecstasy Act. It was passed by Joe Biden in order to shut down the rave culture, which the DEA viewed at the time as being nothing more than just drug parties. 2003, and they did. And now EDM has come back and it's mainstream. And, but because the Rave Act is like an expansion of the crack house laws to apply to commercial venues. So if you're a venue owner or a promoter, you could be held liable if your patrons are using drugs. Could very well be unconstitutional. But it passed because they tacked it on. It had a lot of opposition the first year, and then they tacked it on as a rider to the Amber Alert Act, right? So no congressperson was going to vote against that. So they kind of slipped it in, and they cracked down on the rave scene, and now promoters and venue owners don't want to work with groups like DanceSafe. They're hiding behind the Rave Act. So, oh, we can't implement these safety measures that are maybe going to cost us more money because we could be held liable, and they're taking only a zero tolerance approach to drug use, and it's one of the reasons that we're seeing so many fatalities in the US compared to Europe, where they take a more rational harm reduction approach. So the DED has launched a campaign to amend the Rave Act and exempt harm reduction and safety measures.
The attention of everyone in the room. As soon as she walked in, she just had a presence about her. She had a great, big, beautiful smile, and just lightened the room when she entered it.
She loved cupcakes.
She was kind of a cupcake kind of girl. Really, I don't know where she gets it. I think the connotation of drug user implies that it's somebody that uses drugs all the time, and I don't think that was the case with Shelley.
If this could happen to Shelley, if Shelley would do this, anybody would. She didn't have an addictive kind of personality. She obviously thought it enhanced her experience the night that she took it, that she was looking to have a good time, to feel close to the people around her. The educational things that we've seen say, Molly's bad. Here, Shelley and her friends took it because they liked the way it made them feel. I think that has to be acknowledged in an effective, realistic educational campaign to say, yeah, there's some good sides to this, there's some attractive sides, if not good, but there's some risks associated with it.
These are really smart kids. Shelley was a Jeff Scholar at UVA. That means that was a $100,000 full scholarship. She was a smart girl.
I think there's a need for more education, but unfortunately a lot of the information that's being put out is not accurate and destroys the credibility of the people putting it out. So the only practical response then is harm reduction.
college itself goes to great lengths for using harm reduction in terms of alcohol use by college students. This is the same thing. There are, in spite of the war on drugs, drug use by particularly the 18 to 25-year-old age group is rampant. And for us to deny that or believe that it isn't so is harming our children.
The law enforcement approach has not worked. Prohibition hasn't worked. It's been,
War on drugs.
Yeah, it's been, MDMA has been an illegal substance for 30 years and it's still readily available. Harm reduction at this point is our only viable option. She asked for water just before she died, and I think was headed to the bar or wherever she could get some water and never made it. She waited too long.
So she was feeling the effects of being
Hot and
very
dry.
hot, right? And I'm sure she was dancing wildly at the EDM concerts. That's what they do. They're all just pumping and pushing for hours on end. And if you're going to be taking a drug like Molly, the risks such as heat stroke and exhaustion and all those kinds of things are a real possibility. I really want to do what I can to protect young people. I love young people, and for me, I grew up with Shelley. She had a lot of friends, and I miss not being able to be involved with them. So this gives me a way to still be involved with young people without being pedantic. I understand that you can't teach from the top down. It has to be peer to peer. So I want to be the person that's feeding them the information that they can feed to each other. And why am I doing this? Easy. Because Shelley's death has to have meaning. For me, as a rational, loving mother, I can't live with the thought that, well, she just died. There's no purpose. I believe that things happen for a reason. I never in a million years thought it would be that my daughter would die. Over the past 9 months, I've had a chance to kind of reflect a lot on it, and I absolutely believe that Shelley died so that other people would live. She is a good messenger. She was a great kid. She was smart, she was affable, she was musically inclined, she was the whole package. And it happened to her. If it can happen to her, it can happen to your kid.
Go to amendtheRaveAct.org and sign Dee Dee's petition right away if you haven't already. So I want to invite someone up now. Well, let me say, the broader drug policy reform movement. I think MDMA, real quick, I think MDMA has a crucial role to play. I know a lot of people here are SSDP members and are thinking about another direction to focus on in drug policy reform now that marijuana seems to be happening and have a momentum on its own. But I was just told by someone who does a lot of fundraising that we're not going to see marijuana reform happen unless we actually get the funding. So keep that in mind. Keep donating to MPP and other organizations because there's still work to be done. But assuming that public perception has now changed around marijuana and we want to use that to keep moving reform forward, I think MDMA has a crucial role to play precisely because, like marijuana, it has a relatively safe profile. But unlike marijuana, people have died. And so it serves as this bridge between reform efforts around the safest drug going up to the most dangerous drug. And one of the most important things to know, I like saying this over and over and over and over again, the reason that we want to legalize and regulate MDMA is to reduce harms. Same thing for most drugs, maybe the only exception being marijuana that has so little harm that's resulting from it, right? And why is that? That's because prohibition creates a uncontrolled market. Prohibition's not drug control, it's the abdication of drug control. It's putting the manufacture and distribution of drugs in the hands of criminals who will sell anything to anyone, who doesn't ask for ID when they sell, exposing young people to drugs that we could actually reduce access to if we legalized. And while you're probably, like me and others, a proponent of the civil rights to use MDMA, I strongly encourage you to understand the importance of legalizing and regulating in a way that can actually reduce access to minors, because when you have your own teenagers, you'll feel the same way I do, and you'll understand. You know, others talk about parental consent, and there are laws in a number of states where parents are allowed to give alcohol in their homes to their minor children if they want to, and some people believe that should be the case with MDMA. But MDMA has enough dopamine pleasure action and enough dangers that we don't want to see it liberalized. It's already liberalized, right? To the degree that marijuana legalization is the liberalization of marijuana, we want MDMA to provide adults with safe legal access to the drugs so that we can shrink the criminal market, reduce the adulterants, and also reduce access to minors. And of course, we'll have diversion, adults buying for teenagers, and we have to accept some of that, right? So the way I think about it, it's immensely preferable to the situation we have today. But that's an important argument, and that's also the argument that advocates for reform are giving on all of the other drugs, particularly around opiates, and don't need to get into it. But I just wanted to say that, MDMA has another important role too, in that not just to serve as this bridge, but really we're going to achieve reforms around the drugs that have the softer public perception of it. If there's more compelling reasons to reform laws around opiates and other drugs where we see so many people imprisoned and so many people dying. But the public, I believe, is going to do this incrementally. And so another reason MDMA, I think, is a good drug to start working on next is that it's a relatively safe drug that has medicinal value and a very enthusiastic and large community of advocates, more so than any other drug that I know of except for marijuana. And so that gives us a lot of momentum. And that's a good way to segue.